Hi students, welcome to Bosco Campus Vision. I am Darshana. Hope all of you are fine. Let us continue the topic. In the previous class we discussed about novel. Today we are going to discuss about elements of fiction. Let us see what are the major elements of a fiction. The first element is plot. Then how can we define this first element, that is plot? Plot is the sequential order of incidents in a story. Yes. Plot means it is the sequential order or arrangements of incidents or events in a story. It is called a plot. And plot is not merely the outline of the story. Yes, it may be believed that plot means it is the outline of the story. But plot is not merely the outline of the story, but it is an outline with the reasons given for the development of that particular story. That means the particular reason is given for the same. So plot is the sequential arrangement of incidents in a story, and it is not merely the outline of the story, but it is an outline with the reasons given for the same. For example, Othello. That is Othello, famous tragedy written by Shakespeare. An outline of Othello would read like: a dark-skinned Moor falls in love with a pretty girl, he kills her. This is the outline of the tragedy Othello. That means Othello, that person, a dark-skinned Moor, falls in love with a pretty girl named Desdemona, and he, that is Othello, kills his wife, Desdemona. That is the outline of the story. But its plot would be: a dark-skinned Moor fell in love with a pretty girl. He killed her, suspecting an affair between her and his best friend. Yes, here the reason is given for killing his wife. A dark-skinned Moor fell in love with a pretty girl. He killed her. Yes, Othello killed his wife Desdemona because he suspects an affair between his wife and his best friend. That's why he killed his wife. That means here the definite reason is the outline of the reason, outline with the reason is given. That is the difference between the outline of a story, mere outline of the story, and the outline with the reasons given for the same. Understand? So, plot is the sequential order of incidents in a story. It is not merely the outline of the story, but it is an outline with the reasons given for the same. Then plot is enacted by characters, and characters can be analyzed through their actions in the plot. Plot means it is a sequential arrangement of incidents, and these incidents or these events were enacted by whom? By characters, and these characters can be analyzed through their actions in the plot. Then plot is a selection of events which the author or the writer chooses to disclose to his readers. Yes. That means it is a selection of events which the author or the writer chooses to reveal to his readers. That means consciously select or arrange that events or logical arrangement of that incidents or events in a story. Then Russian formulas distinguished plot from story. Yes. This Russian formulas, they clearly distinguished or differentiate between plot and a story. Plot is a selection of events which leads to an outcome. It is their definition. These Russian formulas, they defined plot as a selection of events which leads to an outcome which has a particular significance. At the same time, The story is an amorphous mass of actual happenings. Amorphous in the sense means lack of clear structure, etc. That means not definite shape or clear structure, etc. That means story is an amorphous mass of actual happenings, the raw material from which the author makes a selection. So the author tried to select logical events from this amorphous mass of actual happenings. And Russian formalist considers this as a raw material from which the author makes a selection, and he selects the logical incidents from this happenings, and he connected it in a sequential order, and which leads to an outcome, and also it has a particular significance. That is the definition given by Russian formalists. They clearly distinguished plot from story. Plot is a selection of events which leads to an outcome and which has a particular significance. At the same time, story is considered as an amorphous mass of actual happenings, that is the raw material from which the author makes a selection. They only consider these group of actual happenings or these amorphous mass of happenings only considered as the raw material for the author or the writer to make a selection. However, in some novels, especially those employing stream of consciousness, in the previous class I already told you what you mean by the stream of consciousness technique. That means whatever the author thinks or whatever in his or her mind, that is expressed in a free form without any chronological order. So, however, in some novels, especially those employing stream of consciousness, as in, for example, James Joyce. James Joyce is a modern writer. He was a modern novelist, and he employed this literary technique in his writings. So, in James Joyce, Ulysses is a famous work by James Joyce. And in the case of Ulysses, much of the story becomes part of the plot. So in such cases, the reader is free to read into the story and create his own narrative. In such cases, that means that free expression or open expression without any rigid rules or observance of unities or something like that. In such cases, that is the use of techniques like stream of consciousness or free verse or something like that. So, however, in some novels, especially those employing stream of consciousness, as in the case of James Joyce Ulysses, much of the story, that the majority, most part of the story that becomes, yes, much of the story becomes part of the plot. In such cases, the reader is, so the reader has right or is free to read into the story and create his own narrative. Then the critical term mythos in Aristotle's Poetics. Aristotle, we all know that, is a famous literary critic, and his famous work Poetics. In that particular work Poetics, he noted one critical term, that is mythos. And this term corresponds, or the meaning of this particular term, that is mythos, corresponds roughly with the plot. That means mythos, he pointed in his work Poetics, means plot. So Aristotle saw plot as a governing principle to which other elements like character must be subordinated. Yes, he considers or he saw plot as a governing principle. So in Poetics, he discussed about so many elements of a tragedy, etc. So he saw plot as a governing principle to which other elements here means character, thought, diction, melody, etc. So here plot as a governing principle to which other elements like character or thought must be subordinated to the plot. And these plots can be tightly knit or episodic in nature. Then the second element is character. So how can we define this element? Character. Character is a person portrayed in a narrative or a drama. Character means it is a person portrayed or depicted in a narrative or a drama. And traditional fiction often resorts to physical description of characters. That means this traditional writers or novelists, they gave much importance to the, or they focused on the physical description of characters. They often resorts to this traditional fiction often resorts to physical description of characters, but modern and postmodern fiction focuses on the state of mind of characters. Yes, but the 20th century novelists and postmodern writers or novelists, they focus on the state of mind of characters. That's why they use stream of consciousness, interior monologue, such type of writing techniques in their writings. Because they focused on the state of mind of characters rather than the physical description of characters. And sometimes the author uses telling names to describe the characters. Yes, some writers uses telling names to describe the character traits of that particular character. For example, names of Dickens characters such as Scrooge. Scrooge means a miserly person. Murdstone, a seductive man who kills his lovers. A Pecksniff, that means a hypocrite. All these names are self-explanatory. Self-explanatory sense means we readers can easily understand the character trait of that particular character from the name itself. So sometimes the author uses telling names to describe the characters, and these names are self-explanatory. That means we can easily understand the character trait of that particular character. Then some modern writers use names that function as allusions. That means biblical or mythological characters used in their writings. For example, Daedalus in a portrait of the artist as a young man. This a portrait of the artist as a young man was written by James Joyce. He was a modern novelist. And the character in this particular novel, Daedalus, is a mythical character. Then Ishmael in Moby Dick. Such type of characters. Then character. It is a Greek word which means a distinctive nature. So what is the meaning of the term character? Character is the Greek word which means a distinctive nature. E.M. Forster, one of the famous modern writers, in his famous work Aspects of the Novel, distinguishes between flat and round characters. Yes. What do you mean by this flat and round characters? Flat characters means those characters which remain unchanged throughout the story and are also minor figures are called flat characters. That means some characters remain unchanged throughout the story, and such type of characters are considered as minor figures in the fiction because these characters remain unchanged. No change happened to such minor characters. Such type of characters are called flat characters. Round characters are three-dimensional and whose personality traits are unique and well developed and undergo rapid changes throughout the story. That means from the beginning up to the end, the main character or the round characters undergo rapid changes throughout the story. That is from the beginning up to the end. Such type of characters are called round characters. So round characters are three-dimensional whose personality traits are unique and well developed. Such type of characters are called round characters. Then 20th century freely expressed the concept of the unconscious and other literary techniques such as the interior monologue and magic realism. I already told you that is James Joyce is famous for the using stream of consciousness technique. So 20th century literature is famous for using such type of unconscious literary techniques. That is the concept of the unconscious. Such type of, that means closely attached with the state of mind. Such type of literary techniques such as interior monologue, stream of consciousness, magic realism, etc. And they made possible faithful portrayal of a character's complex inner self. That means they gave much importance, this 20th century of modern novelists, they gave much importance to the state of mind of characters rather than the physical description of the characters. And this may include direct methods like the attribution of qualities in description or commentary, then and indirect methods, that means dramatic methods, inviting readers to infer qualities from characters, action, speech or appearance, etc. Such type of techniques or methods they used in the depiction or the attribution in the narration of story. That is, direct methods like attribution of qualities in description or commentary, then indirect or dramatic methods like inviting readers, that is giving permission or allow readers to infer qualities from characters, action, speech or appearance. Then another modern writer named Henry James, he writes that a character is interesting as it comes out, and by the process and the duration of that emergence, just as a procession is effective by the way it unrolls. He defines character in an interesting way. A character is interesting as it comes out, and by the process and the duration of that emergence, just as a procession is effective by the way it unrolls. And there is a belief that character is destiny or character is fate. But Henry James did not believe in the maxim character is fate. Character is fate in the sense means actually character is destiny is a quote attributed to the Greek philosopher Heraclitus. And this quote implies that, or it means that destiny or fate is not a predetermined outside force, but that one's future or destiny is determined by his own inner character. That is the meaning of that sentence, that maxim. Character is fate means one's future or destiny is determined by his own inner character. But James Joyce did not believe in that quote, in the maxim character is fate. The quote character is fate, that means that suggests that the whole story of a person is the result of that person's character. That is the meaning of that quote. That is, it suggests the whole story of a person is the result of that person's character. But Henry James' argument is that the unfurling of character, that is the development or the revealing of character, makes the literary work beautiful. That is his belief. He does not believe in the maxim character is fate. Aristotle's Poetics considers character an instrument to make the correct choices, thereby reducing the character to a mere moment of a plot or the event or act of choosing. He considers character as an instrument to make the correct choices. And for Emerson, character is like an acrostic. That means read it forward, backward or across, it is still spells the same thing. That is his definition to the term character. It is like an acrostic. Acrostic meaning a poem, word puzzle or other composition is called acrostic.